So the series today is one of 4 different parts. In this case, we're talking about teaching communication for your students, with your students. And part of that comes into also, and we've got Jamie coming in here. I'll let him in here a second. Communication, kind of back to Mark's piece there, can go right along with engagement and certainly relationships. So communication is a broad topic, but especially right now in remote instruction, virtual learning, whatever it's being called, certainly is a really important thing, if not a critical thing, to communicate with your students, but have your kids communicate with each other, to foster those relationships with each other and to engage them. So today, I'm going to take you through and maybe welcome Jamie. Thanks for being with us. Hopefully you can hear us okay. But real quick before I move any further, I just want to tell you that our team, I don't know if any of you have met with Zach in the upper left-hand corner there, Amy Jimenez, myself, and Peter Grostic. We're here to support you next week, the following week. And so I'll come back to this slide a little bit more because the tools, strategies, and kind of some resources or tips. If you have more questions on those, by all means, you can meet with us in a virtual coaching session if you haven't already done so, okay? So I'll bring the slide up at the very end. Our agenda for today, we're gonna look at communication as a skill. We're gonna focus and spend some time on some different approaches and some tips as far as bringing in some of these communication approaches. We'll spend some time with some strategies. Actually, we're going to maybe even use and kind of practice one of these strategies. And then we'll go through some tools and some resources. And same thing there, we'll practice a couple of those tools there, okay? So we'll be together for a little bit before 4 o'clock. I hope that we have some time, especially to kind of engage, communicate with each other. Feel free to mute, but from time to time, I will be asking you to share your thinking and participate in some activities, okay? So as we explore communication tools and tips today, I want you to consider a couple things, okay? These questions I'd like you to consider in your own teaching. How are you going to model some of these skills, both oral and written skills with your students? So modeling, we know, is a huge piece. And so it's important that we always continue to model those things. How can your students practice? Practice, 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 we know is important for everything. And so in your lessons, in your units, when are you giving them those opportunities to practice some of these things? And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, this idea of practicing and formatting, structuring your lessons, where you can maybe bring in some of these strategies to give them that practice opportunity. The other piece about practicing there is practicing their presentation skills to a variety of audiences too. We're going to talk about, it's important that kids know how to communicate to a variety of audiences, whether it be ages, whether it be location, whether it be in different languages even. And it's great to have Marnia on here as an EL teacher because that's super important. And then the last one there, how can students be encouraged to communicate innovatively and effectively through the technology, okay? And so I know right now things have totally shifted for everyone globally. And so trying to use the technology is a big piece, but hopefully, and Mark was chatting a little bit before everybody got on with me, saying some of these things he hopes to use in his classroom even when we are back face to face. And that's what I hope for you today. I hope that some of these things, if not maybe many of them, you can use them in a remote setting, or you can use them in a face-to-face or kind of a blended learning environment, okay? So be thinking about those considerations, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on those at the end of this webinar here, okay? So a little bit of background here about communication skills. There's an organization called the Partnership for 21st Century Skills from the National Educational Foundation. They used to be called p21.org, and I'm not sure if that name sounds familiar at all. They used to have a website, p21.org, but they are now with Batista Kids, I think it's called. But they define communication in 5 different facets, 5 different skills, if you will. And we're going to kind of be breaking these down as we go through. The first one is articulate thoughts and ideas effectively using oral, written, and nonverbal communication skills. The second one, listen effectively to decipher meaning, values, and intentions. Third, use communication for a range of purpose, maybe to inform or motivate or persuade. The next one is use multiple technologies and know how to assess their effectiveness. And then the 5th one, communicate effectively for diverse audiences. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my question that I asked you. So we're going to explore each of those 5 facets there in some more detail. Sorry about that. In some more detail with tech and strategies associated for each one. Okay. So let me start out with that first one that was up on the screen there. And this is articulating thoughts. And so when we think about this first facet of articulating thoughts, we heard they've got to know how to effectively communicate in oral, written, and then in nonverbal ways, okay? So essentially getting students to write, talk about their thinking, that's the main focus of learning. And as I mentioned, with this idea of communication, right now in remote learning too, it's a really powerful way to engage them, right? So one thing to consider, a tip to consider as you think about communication is really over and over, the more I read, the more I'm convinced that moving more towards a dialogic classroom from wherever on the spectrum you currently reside will increase engagement and also academic success, okay? I mean, everybody's talking about, yep, we've got to engage kids and to get them to dialogue. We retain more, the research shows, of what we read, when we read about it, talk about it, or both. There's a lot of ways to move to more of a dialogue type of approach, including discussion boards, debates, breakout rooms. Maybe show of hand how many people have been doing breakout rooms in either Zoom or Google Meet, or maybe a nod of the head. Yep, getting those kids to dialogue, especially in breakout rooms. Sometimes it's even easier because kids will dialogue in smaller groups. Calling on students, doing polls. We're going to talk about Pear Deck a little bit today. Nonverbal responses. This is something that you can try on Monday even with your students. Any one of these things, hopefully, that we talk about. But establishing those norms can be challenging and takes time. So again, as you think about these different things, just know that moving more towards having more dialogue, class discussion is definitely a way to engage students, but also deepen their learning, okay? So a couple tools I wanna maybe bring up to you, and maybe you're familiar with some of these, and I'm gonna kind of approach it both ways because we know that there is this idea of synchronous learning right now and asynchronous learning. So you're gonna hear me use that term. Right now we're in a synchronous meeting here, but I'll kind of bring those terms up from time to time. And so a couple of tools that, I just want to talk about. I'm not going to go in depth of how to use them. I'll just maybe clarify that for this webinar. I'm not going to show you how to use these, but if you need some support, we've got our virtual coaching, like I said. So how many of you have been using Google Meet? Maybe just a show of hands real quick. Okay, perfect. Any Zoomers other than being on Zoom right now? Okay, so again, these tools, Zoom, Google Meet, are synchronous tools. And so as you meet with your students, you know, having them talk orally over the Meet, over the Zoom. A lot of times they're afraid to maybe speak in whole group, push them in those breakout rooms. They certainly do. But then also utilizing the chat, okay? Utilizing the chat feature is sometimes even more engaging, and you get better participation there, okay? We're gonna do a little activity that I'm gonna have you use a different tool as we're in this Zoom call through a Google Doc. So it's going to be a live document. You could do a website too that allows for that instant sharing. So I'm going to show you kind of that strategy here in a little bit. Padlet. Anybody heard of Padlet before? Just a show of hands. Okay. Padlet is another useful tool that you can get your kids to engage in, have discussions in. Okay. And so Padlet, you can use that within your classroom, both synchronously and asynchronously. I will say that Padlet, there is a free version of Padlet. It does only give you 3 Padlet pages. What I usually like to do is just delete the content off the previous one and re-add it, okay? And so again, Padlet, nice for having the kids communicate in live time, which we're gonna do something similar in a Google Doc here, or give it to them as a homework assignment, or as an entrance ticket when they come into class. So they could do it asynchronously on their time, right? A couple of other things, considerations that are not up on the screen there is using maybe your learning management system. I know like Bernadette's in Lakeshore, and I think Bernadette are using like Schoology, but I know Jamie and Mark are using Google Classroom. So using the discussion or the question feature within those 2 platforms for class discussion asynchronously. So you could do that offline as a homework assignment, tell them, hey, I'd like you to answer this before class tomorrow. And so fostering those and giving the kids, again, that practice time, those practice opportunities to discuss is really important and very beneficial. And the last tool that you see up there on the screen is a tool called Socrative. Socrative is another tool to foster discussion. One nice thing about Socrative, it's Socrative.com, by the way. Socrative allows you to share out or have your kids both share out kind of in a discussion, but you can also use it for assessment purposes there, right? Actually, you know what? I apologize. I'm going to go back here a couple slides because I want to give you the notes for this slide deck here. And so I don't know if you were able to write that access down there, that bit.ly. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Sorry about that. But I'm going to then jump ahead here. So these links that you see down here at the bottom, if you want to explore those later on, feel free to click on these links. There should be clickable links there, okay? So Socrative, as I was mentioning, it's good for not only discussion, but you can have assessments. And another nice thing is it can be flexible. You can kind of do it on the fly. There are already some pre-made quick questions that you can send out to kids and have them anonymously communicate, discuss with you, okay? They have built-in exit tickets, and they also have a space race that's kind of a fun little review, all right? Any questions about Meet or Padlet, Socrative, or even kind of the discussions in your LMS? So we're going to practice this, okay? There's a strategy called a brain dump. Anybody heard of the brain dump at all? So brain dump is a writing strategy actually that uses an intentionally open-ended structure, and it's asking students to dump as much of their ideas or knowledge about a topic as they can during a specific amount of time. It can be used for a free write or as a method of giving feedback. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to grab this link. If you want to, you can also just type in that bit.ly there. This will take you to a Google Doc. We're going to use a live shared Google document here. And I'm going to navigate over to that page here. And so I see we've got a few people in. So we're going to use this Google Doc for this brain dump strategy. But I would encourage you to think about using this live Google Doc. Now, I shared this so anyone with a link can edit. It's an easy way for you to kind of do the same thing here with students. You could share it, put it in Google Classroom or Schoology for your students to access, and you can make it where they have to sign in with their email. But a little strategy and a little kind of tip here is you can have a discussion in a Google Doc. How many people have used a shared Google Doc with students before? Has it been chaotic, Jamie? Kind of. You're muted. Sorry, a little chaotic. So yeah, when you're on a shared document, sometimes the discussion is happening all over. But if you use a table, so if you go into the insert and insert a table and give every student an assigned row, then you can give them just that space to share their thinking, okay? And so I'm gonna have you just practice this with this idea of this brain dump. And so I'm going to give you 1 minute, all right? I'm going to give you just 1 minute to answer this prompt, and I'll assign everybody a row here in a second. But what are other ways that you've used to get your students to share their thinking, okay? So think about that question a second. What I'd like is I'd like Jim to answer in row 1, Bernadette, row 2, Marina, row 3, Jamie, row 4, and Mr. Cooper, Mark, in row 5 there, okay? Take 1 minute and just share your thinking. By the way, when you pause and you have them share out, that's a great time for you to take a drink of water. About another 30 seconds there. Now, kind of a little tip here, if you wanted to, instead of giving numbers, you could actually put the kids' names off on the first row instead of the numbers there. So then everybody knows exactly where they're going. And you could reuse it from time to time. So yeah, I see Mark putting in that he's using the chat feature, definitely the chat within Meet or Zoom. Definitely a great way to capture that. Yeah, Jamie's using Google Sheets. Nice. It is a cleaner. Google Sheets, very similar to this Google Doc here. Yeah, Marnia, thank you. Yep, asking those open-ended questions there. Schoology discussions, I see Bernadette's doing that. That's a powerful way. And what's nice about that is threaded there. And then Jim was sharing questions to allow them to, yeah, share their experiences instead of just the right and wrong. Good. So any questions? Actually, I saw one question from Jamie, I think. Can you elect the words above? Is that meaning like on this Google Doc here, Jamie? Yeah. So yeah, if I get these responses, so I'll point this out. This Google Doc is nice for them to quickly share their thinking. But now if I wanted them to not share their thinking, I could go up to the share button and I could set that up so that instead of anyone with a link can edit, I can just turn that to view. I could set it where they could comment if I wanted them to, but if I wanted you all to just view it, now I'm the only one that can comment on that, all right? And so this Google Doc, or like I said, Socrative or Padlet, you can set those tools up where they just share their thinking. Okay, get their thinking down.
So scroll up a little bit.
Yeah.
Up higher.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Oh, brain poop. Yeah.
So I did that. I did that because I know I would have a student do that. Is there a way? I know that you can lock things in like Google Sheets, and I know you can. There's roundabout ways you can lock things in Google Slides. Can you lock like part of a Google document or not?
You can't, Jamie,
Okay.
but let me show you one other little trick here, and that is under this Google Doc, I can see exactly what happened on the document. Okay. Oh, let me go to version history. And so if I want to go through, now in this case, you were all anonymous users, but I can see that this particular user deleted the dump piece there, okay, and put in poop, okay? And so I could kind of go through and see what was changed and then who that was, okay? It might take...
Ours kids, I think, almost always are by their name. They log in by their name, and so we would see who that was.
Yep. So it does take a little bit of digging there, but yeah, especially instead of anonymous users showing up there, the names would show up. Okay, great question. But unfortunately, Jamie, yeah, you can't lock the document. Okay. So again, this idea of doing a brain dump, just pausing your lesson and just having them get their ideas, share their thinking down. In this case, on a Google Doc, it's quick. And again, you have all the kids' information there. If you wanted to have more of a threaded discussion, that's where maybe something like Bernadette put in a Schoology discussion or maybe a question in your classroom. All right. Any other questions at all? All right. So kind of moving on here a little bit. The next facet, the second facet from Partnership for 21st Century Skills mentions listening. Listen effectively to decipher meaning, values, and intentions, okay? And so getting students not only to listen to their teacher, but also to each other is very important for that communication, but also engaging, all right? Breaking down meaning, values, intentions is something really to, again, have the kids practice, foster that. So a couple different tools that are out there that can kind of help with this. One is Edpuzzle. Anybody you've been using Edpuzzle? Okay, Edpuzzle, thank you, Bernadette. Maybe Bernadette, can you share how do you use Edpuzzle in your class?
I only used it once so far this year, but at the beginning of the year, the students learned about the Star Spangled Banner, and I found a video on YouTube and inserted about 5 questions into it. And it was a little challenge to get them all connected to the class. That took some practice.
Yeah.
But once I got it set up, it's a great tool.
Good. So the idea of Edpuzzle, just like Bernadette said, is you could take a video, have the kids watch, listen to the video, but as they're going through the video and listening, you can stop it along the way and ask them comprehension questions, multiple choice, true, false, just even leave a comment. And so they have to be intentional that as the video goes through and it pauses, they have to answer and you can see those answers, okay? So if you haven't tried Edpuzzle, again, that's a nice tool to have them practice that listening. If they miss something, they can go back, re-listen to it.
Now with Edpuzzle, teachers, do we only get a certain number of videos that we can do?
Yes, yeah, Jamie, I believe, is it 20 under the free account right now? And so you can kind of push one out and then delete it from your account if you need to.
And you can't archive any of your videos, like if you try to rotate what 20 you have, can you?
Not on the free account,
Okay.
no. And there are some pre-made Edpuzzle lessons. So if someone else has created it, you can bring that in, push that out to your students, and then try to remember to bring that back up next time. Yeah. Another tool that's out there, kind of for not only engagement, but then certainly for listening, communicating, is Pear Deck. Pear Deck is an add-on to Google Slides, and it allows you to build in questions along the way as you're going through the slides. So as kids are not only seeing the slide, they have to listen because the next slide might have a prompt that they have to answer. And those prompts can be multiple choice, text, numbers in the free version. There is a paid version of Pear Deck that allows for a few more types. But again, Pear Deck is a powerful tool to, again, not only use when you're presenting your lesson in Google Slides, but more importantly, to get the kids to listen and then ask them a question and have them decipher, share the meaning, share their thinking about that. Anybody use Pear Deck? Tried Pear Deck at all? Again, oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Is Pear Deck only for live, or if you assign a video or assign a Google Slides later, will anything happen?
Yeah, great question, Jamie. Pear Deck allows you to do synchronous, so live, or asynchronous. So you can give the students a link to your slide, your Pear Deck lesson, which is your slide deck, and they can go through at their own pace for homework. It collects their responses. Now, I will say the free version does not allow you to go back and see who answered what, but you can see responses, okay? There is a paid version that you can see exactly how each kid answered. So it can be both synchronous and asynchronous. Yeah. Any other questions? Thanks for that, Jamie. The last one, kind of with this listening idea, and this next one is also kind of maybe an efficiency for teachers too, is this idea of Mote, or sorry, is an extension called Mote. Just mote.me is the website, but Mote is an add-on that you can put into Google Classroom, Google Docs, Google Slides or Sheets, and it makes it easy for teachers and teams to create voice note comments and feedback. So the way it works is if you have a Google Doc that a student has shared with you, as submitted to you, instead of leaving a text comment to them, you can use Mote or just mote.me and leave a voice. You can dictate your comment to them. The free version gives you 30 seconds of recording time, all right, total on the page. And they have a paid version that gives you 90 seconds, and it then gives the students a transcription or turns it into text so then they can read it. But this is a nice way for the kids to look at their document, but now listen to your comments. And a lot of times teachers say they can comment on things a lot faster than they can type things. But again, it gets the kids that practice that's so important for them to listen to what you're asking them to do instead of hopefully reading your typed out comments there. Right?
What does that look like? I mean, what do they see that they know to click on to hear?
Yeah, yep. So if I go just back into this document here a second, Jamie, and I, let me highlight our brain dump there. And so instead of, if I add a comment, oh, let me expand my screen here a little bit. Oh, do I not have it engaged here? I might have to turn it on in my extensions. So there's my Mote extension. So when I now have my comment using Mote, I'll click on Mote here a minute. What happens is I get a little, pop-up where I can record. Oh, I'm not signed in. Sorry, I would have to allow all of this. But I would sign in. But essentially, I would just record. I'd have a little button here to record. The comment would show up with the file and then a play button off to the side of the page here, right? And again, if that's something that you want to explore further and you need some support with that, I would encourage you, check us out, sign up for a virtual meeting with us, and we can walk you through that. Okay. Sorry about that, Jamie. I wasn't signed in. So those are kind of 3 different tools to maybe incorporate into some lessons and things. But I want to talk about a strategy here. A strategy maybe for listening is called a spider web, having a spider web discussion, okay? The spider web discussion is a useful strategy to use in a large group or a whole group discussion because it focuses on equity and then also depth of conversation. It really gets students to consider both their contributions to the conversation, but also the contributions of each other. So now they have to listen and respond back and forth. This effect comes from either the rubric, the grade, or a visual cue. And so what happens with the spiderweb discussion is you essentially start mapping out. Here's a little diagram. You have kind of your class. Now in this case, the figures are little images, but here's another visual where it's just handwritten out. But the visual of the web discussion really helps the teacher and students see the conversation and track it. It's a helpful display so that students can see who has or who hasn't added to the conversation. In this example, with the handwritten one, you could put this under the document camera. Maybe you could try to get a little fancy and kind of put this up on a Google Doc or a Google Slide and kind of draw back and forth with it. There's a school out in out east called the Harkness School, and they coined a term, the Harkness method, where every class session, they have a Harkness discussion. And so they constantly are having the kids discuss in this manner. And again, it really gets more of an in-depth conversation of getting the kids to talk and engage with one another. And so I've got a short little video here. We're going to watch this. This is Alexis Wiggins, a 9th grade teacher. We're only going to watch a portion of this, but talking from her perspective and hearing from students about this web discussion.
So love, when did he know that it wasn't really love? It was just some boy being infatuated with another girl.
And I don't think that's what he's trying to say. I think he's trying to say, like, what happened to that, basically. Like, you have one focus, and now your focus has completely changed in a matter of, like, not that long at all. And I think he's not trying to say, like, oh, you were so in love, and blah, blah, blah. But I think he's trying to say, like, what happened to Rosalind.
I think it's sort of like what his 2 friends have been, like, telling him the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, they've been just getting so annoyed with him for, like, just being obsessed with this girl that they know he's not actually in love with. And now he's just saying it in his own way.
Each child is noted in my grade book on everything they do. I note every reference to the text they make, every insightful comment, every connection they make to an outside source, every time they interrupt, every time they are off topic. I note that in my grade book, and that's individual feedback for each child. But once a week, I'll also do a group grade. And I'll say, you know, this class was an A class today. You guys did all these things, absolutely. And let's look at the sheet. What didn't you do? And they'll tell me. So introducing that really helped me find the balance.
So they'll die if they fight. So of course Capulet's gonna be chill because he doesn't want to die. Tybalt seems like, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it's also sort of like if he killed their son, like they're obviously gonna seek revenge and kill their daughter. So it's kind of like,
Yeah. We can just speak when we want to speak, and I think it makes you more engaged because you listen for something to respond to, and you try to understand what other people are saying. So it just makes you more creative, and it's not so like this, as much as it is like it's more liberal, and you can actually think instead of just a question-answer format.
You also learn from everyone in the discussion. You know, someone else might have a totally different opinion than you do, and it could open up a whole new view on the story for you. So it really helps when you have a bunch of people saying their views.
Yeah.
I'd say that.
So the teacher, as you saw there, the teacher is kind of in the background, just really letting the conversation happen, okay?
So when did he know that it was?
Now, maybe a couple things to note. This takes practice, okay? I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But as you watch that, as you watch what her class is doing, again, in that case, that was a recording of a face-to-face. You could still do that in a virtual manner. You'd have to kind of track that a little bit different. But question for you about what concerns, as you have kids listen and discuss with one another, what are concerns or questions, issues maybe that you have when you try to foster some of that discussion? Think about that for just a second. And then I've got the chat open. If you'll open the chat, share down any questions or concerns you have when you're trying to get your kids to discuss. Yeah, I like that, Jamie. People dominating the conversation. Yep, some not participating. Yeah, judgment, that criticism, Jim, definitely. And a lot of that comes back to that culture, right? It's developing that culture within your classroom where kids can feel free to share. Yeah, Marnia's piece about some preferring to stay muted, especially in virtual times right now. It's easy just to mute yourself, right? Don't have a whole lot of elementary discussions. Yeah, Bernadette, I'm sure you have just limited time with the kids. And so it's just like, okay, we only have that amount of time. Yeah, and if someone in the chat doesn't have good wireless, yep, to make that discussion, it can be tough there, Mark. So again, thinking about this, whether it's face-to-face or if it's in person, a nice thing about this spider web piece is there is that accountability. The other thing is you kind of step back. You let the kids, as you heard those two students say, they really learn from each other and they have to listen. Again, a big facet of communication is listening to each other, listening to others' opinions. That is super important. Some of this, again, comes into that practice and those expectations. And later on in a little bit, I'll share with you kind of helping kids with practicing having a discussion, because honestly, kids don't know how to listen sometimes intently and then share their thinking or share their opinion productively with each other. But I've got some sentence stems for you that can hopefully help with that, right? Any questions about the spider web or any of those tools from earlier? Feel free to share your questions in the chat too as we go through. So the third facet of communication then is a range of purpose. And so some of those purposes can be to inform, to motivate, to persuade. These purposes can be integrated. Certainly they're already integrated into ELA standards, but they can be integrated across the curriculum. It goes certainly beyond the ELA piece. And I want to bring up the fourth facet there. And the fourth facet is really communicating effectively to diverse audiences. And so this could be whether it's an education audience, maybe work, family, friends. It could be maybe in multiple languages as well, right? And so as you think about diverse audiences and purposes, one thing to think about, here's some tips, is fostering that discussion and those comments, all right? Getting kids to, well, for you to model that is so critical, as we talked earlier. But as I mentioned before, practice, practice, practice. Many teachers that I work with, I hear them say, kids don't know how to discuss or listen and then comment on things. My question for them is, how often are we giving students a chance to have those discussions, to share their thinking orally, to type out their thinking over a chat or over a Google Doc there? And so a couple things to think about here in the discussions and comments. Actually, let me grab a link to a Google Doc. This Google Doc that I'm going to put in the link, and I'll share all of these links too in an email with the recording of the video. But this document that I just shared with you has discussion STEM starters. And so kind of broken it down into entering a conversation, something about maybe supporting ideas with evidence, paraphrasing a conversation, building and then challenging in on the conversation there, elaborating or asking for clarifying questions, and then maybe some sentence starters for helping students with how to synthesize the conversation. Because again, as I mentioned, a lot of teachers say, kids don't know how to have these conversations. One, when are we modeling it? How are we modeling it? And then two, when are we giving kids the opportunity to practice some of these things and try these things? Because I think that's one of the biggest pieces there. And another big piece with that is giving them kind of some help with these things. So teachers that I work with, they will take some of these and they might either have printed copies, they might have them up on their whiteboard, they might have them up on their screen. As those conversations, as spiderweb discussions are happening, kids can refer back to these and use these either as their prompt or to help them get that thinking or that talking going there. So can everyone access this document okay? Got a copy of it? You should be able to only probably view it. If you go to File, make a copy, then you can make a copy and you can tweak that as needed, all right? Hopefully that helps you with some of those sentence starters there. Any questions about this idea of discussion and dialogue and then purpose there? A strategy I want to just share with you here is a protocol called Critical Friends. Anybody heard of Critical Friends at all? Perfect, thank you, Bernadette. I know in Lakeshore, maybe your administrators maybe have been using this a little bit, but Critical Friends is a protocol or process of giving and receiving constructive feedback. So again, it gets the kids talking with each other, but also listening and then giving feedback. So we're gonna watch this short 2-minute, 11-second video. This is a nice tool to use kind of getting kids to maybe share their initial ideas, or if they're presenting a project, or checking along the way there. here about Critical Friends. Again, it's really structured.
Using Powtoon.
Sorry about that. Critical Friends is best when it's in just a small group. You saw that there were kind of some different roles. The facilitator is typically the teacher and kind of the timekeeper. But then you have a group of maybe 3, maybe 4 people, but one is the presenter. They share out their thinking. And then the discussants, as you saw in another one of the roles, they listen. And so you can give a structured amount of time. A lot of times the presenter might talk for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. They present their idea or they present their presentation. Then there's a next step there of the discussants, as you said, share maybe any questions or clarifications. What we like to do is we like to encourage teachers to use the I like kind of prompt. So the discussants listen during the presenter's piece, and then during the next step, the discussants share the likes that they heard from the presenter. The kind of final round that we like to do is then the wonders. And so the feedback, that critical feedback, comes from the discussants as well. They might use the prompt of I wonder, and then follow that up with kind of their feedback there. So Critical Friends is a really useful strategy, can be short and sweet, maybe a 5-minute round per kid. So if you've got 3 kids in a group, there's 15 minutes. But now all of the kids are discussing with each other, again, in small groups. Something definitely you can do in person, or you could certainly do that in a remote manner, okay? Here's something real quick. Just, some kids sometimes will present things out, or they might just kind of move around the room freely there, all right? Something to think about here, and I'd love your feedback in the chat real quick. What's a way that maybe you could use Critical Friends in your own instruction, whether your science or your EL or your music, or Mark, you said your social studies? Science. Math. I was getting there. So yeah, think about that. How could you bring that in? I like that, Bernadette. Yep, reflect on performance. Good. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, summarizing. Good, Jamie. Yes. Marina, yes, sharing their presentations. Number talk is a big piece. We want them to certainly engage in those. So great ideas. Thank you for sharing those. A couple kind of last little tools here that something to think about with communication, that these are tools that can kind of span all of the different pieces there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of these. Flipgrid, anybody use Flipgrid? Okay, maybe kids might be Flipgrid out, but Flipgrid is a nice way to especially do it in a video or an audio format. So again, getting kids to orally present, and that is typically best for asynchronous type of lessons there. But getting kids to post videos to each other and then respond to each other. It used to be kids could only respond by creating the video. Now you can turn it either into video or a text type of comment to each other. Seesaw is a platform. I think a lot of elementary teachers seem to be using Seesaw a lot. But Seesaw has the ability for kids and teachers to share videos of either a lesson or their thinking or their learning, or they can do it in a drawing. And if they do a drawing, then kids can record their voice. They can hear each other and they can leave text comments. Teachers can also record audio comments. So again, oral and written communication can be done throughout Flipgrid and Seesaw. And then the last little tool or resource that's very powerful is Screencastify. Another one that's out there is Loom. Marina, I see you shaking your head. Hopefully Screencastify or Loom has helped out with that. Record your video, put it in your classroom or Schoology. Students can do the same thing too. How many of you have had your students maybe do a lesson where they record their thinking and share that with you? Anybody? Bernadette's done that? Awesome. So another way to think about getting the kids to communicate orally, digitally, any one of these 3 tools can do that. So maybe it was kind of a lot. Hopefully you got a couple things out of it. I'd like you to think about this. I want to circle back to these pieces. These are the questions that I asked at the beginning, okay? So I asked you to think about and consider some of these questions about your lessons, about your units, and getting your kids to communicate. So think about this, think it out, and then take one of those answers, or take one of those questions, excuse me, and I'd like you to reflect, share your thinking now. How might you use one of these strategies, use one of these tools, or even what's a lesson coming up next week or maybe after Christmas break that you might want to try to model and then have the kids practice with better communication. And Jim, since you aren't in the classroom, think about how you might even try some of these things with staff, possibly. Marina, good, getting kids, yeah, in groups of just 2. And Marina, any specific way, bless you, any specific way that maybe you'd have the kids try to communicate with each other? Go ahead and share that in the chat if you would, or certainly unmute.
Well, I have a group of 4 students who are working on presentations, but they will present to younger students. So I think I will ask them, I will put them in groups of 2, and I will ask them to review each other's presentations, because they will be experts on the topic, because they made very similar, Google Slides, and maybe they will just comment on each other's, but I will ask them probably to use like Google Slides comments, so they try to be like teachers and they can leave those comments. So it's not just a conversation, but it's oral plus written.
Great.
And hopefully then it will help them. Otherwise, it's always feedback from me. And I see all 4 of those presentations, and I think sometimes I'm not as fresh as they will be.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for sharing that. Jamie, I like your, I just missed it there. I like your thinking about, bringing in a Flipgrid and having them just share one question. I like that, breaking it into one question and just having that for a test review there. And then encouraging them to comment. That's a big piece there. If you could encourage or certainly maybe even require them to comment, again, it's getting them that practice opportunity. Jim, you like the spiderweb discussion there? Yeah, good. Again, this can definitely improve class discussion. And it takes a lot of modeling and a lot of practicing. Not only the spiderweb discussion, especially the spiderweb discussion, but any of these things, it takes that modeling, that practice, even kind of those prompts to help them with that. Yeah. And Bernadette, trying some of those new tools to just have them explore some of those. And I like how you said exploring them together. Making mistakes is beneficial for everybody, right? We learn from our failures there. And then, Mark, I really like that piece with math, giving a group maybe a problem and then having them solve that. Again, they could do that synchronously or asynchronously. So thank you for sharing those. Any questions maybe that you have about any of the strategies, tools, tips, anything that we've covered, because we're at our 4 o'clock time period here. Any questions at all? So I want to kind of leave you with the last two things. If you want more of some of these things, we've got these two websites, or sorry, these three ways that you can find out more. We actually have some additional trainings, project-based learning. I think all of you have gone through our remote instruction essentials piece there, or our transformation orientation. I will say that, as I mentioned, this session today is one of 4 different ones. We've already had one on creativity, but coming up February 5th, we've got another 1-hour session on collaboration. And then on April 16th, one of my colleagues will be doing another 1-hour webinar on critical thinking. So please, in your emails, please watch for that. You can register just like you did for this one. And if you can't make it, please still register, because then we'll send you the recording, okay? And as I mentioned, any of these tools, strategies, resources that I shared, I will be emailing you the slide deck, the recording of this, and those documents that I presented. But if you need specific one-on-one help, please feel free to go to our virtual coaching site there. You can go to certus.cbdconsulting.com. All of you should be able to log in. I believe because all of you except for Bernadette can log in with your Google accounts. Bernadette, you can log in with your Microsoft account. But then you can schedule a one-on-one with either Zach, Amy, Peter, or myself there. You can also contact us through the coach@cbdconsulting.com, or we have that phone number down there. So I really appreciate your time today. Thanks. I know it's the end of the work week here. It's ended up at 4 o'clock, and I really appreciate all of you for being on this session with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. You bet. Have a good weekend. Got to move you over here on my screen here. Take care, all.
See ya. Leave.